Hi, this is Jenn Snyder Gibson, and we are coming to you from the Brand Builders Studios in Charlotte, North Carolina with the Breakfast Club Beat. This is such a special treat for myself personally today. The Hood Hargett Breakfast Club has had an amazing relationship with Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police for the past 20 plus years. And we have been so honored since COVID happened that CMPD is an actual member of our Breakfast Club family. We honor police officers at every one of our breakfast events. And when we were getting ready to bring our podcast back, I took a lot of time to think about who did I want to sit down and have our first conversation with. And being that March is Women's History Month, I just felt so called to reach out to Deputy Chief Tonya Arrington and ask her if we could have a conversation with all three female deputy chiefs with CMPD. And it is such a privilege. This is the first time in the history of CMPD that they've all sat down for any kind of conversation or interview together. So, ladies, welcome. I am so happy to be with you today. Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and introduce each of you guys and then have you guys share a little bit about your journey into CMPD and why law enforcement has been such a passion of your life. So we have got Deputy Chief Jackie Hulsey with us. We've got Deputy Chief Tonya Arrington and Deputy Chief Jackie Bryley. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. This is exciting.
Wonderful. So Jackie, tell us what originally called your soul into law enforcement.
Well, that's a good question that even I'm not sure I have figured out in 30 years, quite honestly. It calls to you. Young woman in college, growing up on the West Coast in California. I think this is fitting as you talk about this being Women's Month. I reflect on that and I remember how I was encouraged to be a school teacher. I was told in the late 80s and early 90s, be a school teacher. It's such a good career for a young woman to have a family. And in my heart, and that's the path that I was seeking in college, but in my heart I knew that's not what I wanted to do. I threatened my mom I would go into the Navy, and she fought me on that. And I said, okay, well, let's join a police department instead. And I did. And I chose Charlotte because I had family here. And I came here consistently in the summer times to visit my cousins, and I just fell in love with Charlotte. And I knew this was the community I wanted to work in. And the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department was growing. They were very progressive. And I applied, and here I am, 30 years later.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
Tanya, how about you?
So I was the first person to ever go to college on both sides of my family. I went to UNCC and I played softball. So really that's the main reason I went to college was to keep playing ball. And I was a sophomore and my counselor came to me and was like, you have to pick a major. And I was like, well, softball's my major. And she was like, no, seriously. And I was like, well, I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life. And she was like, well, take a personality test, and it'll help guide you to see what fits your personality. So policing and teaching were the two top jobs. So I was like, well, policing sounds good. You know, you're talking about a team environment. I played team sports my entire life. A lot of excitement around the job of policing. So same thing, I applied with CMPD, been here 28 and a half years, and have had a tremendous experience with this department.
I love that. Were you on a softball scholarship?
I was.
Very nice. Love that. What position?
Shortstop.
See, I just learned something new about you today. I've known you for years and never knew that.
Yeah.
Very nice. Miss Jackie,
Yes,
how
ma'am.
did you get into law enforcement?
Wow. Okay. So, ended up in North Carolina. My grandfather retired at Pope Air Force Base in Fayetteville. I'm born and raised in Abilene, Texas. So, proud Texan, always. Went to high school and college at Fayetteville State, and then was looking for a job and ended up working here in Charlotte for a bank installing software for Y2K. And going to a cubicle every day, I was like, this is just not fun. And I remember going home and digging through a box of stuff from college. And when you go to career fairs, you grab the pencils and the mugs and the cards. And I remember seeing something for CMPD. And then I opened up the flyer and it's like, oh, they pay for your advanced education. I was like, well, I want to get my master's and they're going to pay for it. So why not? And so ended up calling the academy, and it's like, are you hiring? That's how ignorant I was at the time. I was like, are you hiring? And they were like, yeah, there's a process to this, but here's who you need to talk to. And so almost 26 years later, still here.
I love that. That was a good hire. They made a very, very good hire. So a couple fun stats that I learned about a couple of you guys last week in our conversation. So Jackie, you are the first female to win the Firefighters Award at the Academy.
Firearms Award.
Firearms
yes.
Award,
Yeah.
I apologize.
Right, yeah, that was exciting. And I didn't actually even know I was winning that until it was announced at our recruit graduation. At that time, they gave away 3 awards. They give away 4 now, but at the time it was an academic award, physical fitness award, and a firearms award. And unknown to me, I received the award during the graduation ceremony, and afterwards I had reporters coming to me about a news story, and I was in the Charlotte Observer, and I was just really taken aback by that. I was a kid. I was still a kid at that age, 23 years old. I still consider that a kid. But yeah, I don't think I really recognized or understood at that time the significance of that.
Do you still have the article?
I have the article and I have the award.
Oh, love that.
Yes.
And Miss Tonya, you are the first female SWAT captain in the history of CMPD.
So I served on SWAT as an officer. I came back as a sergeant. Then I came back as the captain of special operations. And then I also served as the deputy chief over Spec Ops.
Do we have a lot of female officers in the SWAT team?
No, it's kind of ebbed and flowed over the years. I think right now I don't think we have any women on SWAT. I remember being on there, and I was the only woman on SWAT for a while. So,
wow. Well, we need to work on that, don't we? Mm-hmm. You know, when we had a conversation last week, we were talking about so many different ways we could take this conversation with women in policing. And I know, Jackie, you had really talked a lot about the value of women in policing and what that looks like. And why don't you share with us a little bit on what you see in CMPD?
Well, like I said, even coming on 30 years ago, this was a very progressive agency that understood the value in making sure that the agency reflected the community it served. So we have had a very steady and progressive push towards diversity, culture, different backgrounds, everything. And women are a part of that. Women, need to reflect within the agency as well. But I think really where women play a strong role is we bring a balance to the agency, and we bring a level of compassion, I think, that's just inherent in being female. And that's not to say that our male counterparts don't also do an exceptional job when it comes to compassion out there. But the reality is some crime types, especially, sometimes victims are going to feel more comfortable talking to a female. They're maybe going to connect with a female for a different reason based on the crime. And it's not always female to female. It can be even a male to female based on the situation. So I think that's where we add a lot of value. We add perspective, we add balance to conversations, and it just rounds us out, like it should any agency, private or public.
How many people are on CMPD force today?
Our numbers literally shift daily, but our allocations are 1950 for sworn-ish, but we are probably in the upper 1700s, 1800 current sworn staffing.
So how many would you say, what's the percentage of women that are officers?
Currently, we're at 15% in CMPD, which is just slightly above the national average.
Why is that number low? What do you think it is that could potentially change that in getting more women to want to go into the law enforcement community?
I mean, I think the biggest piece is exposure. So one of the reasons why some reason we're sitting down doing things that are definitely out of our comfort zone. But we had a speaker today talk about when you see yourself in someone else, and so we feel like it's important to put ourselves out there. And so for that young woman or that young lady, we do a lot of college recruitment because, again, sometimes we're graduating college and maybe you don't want to go into a certain field or you're just unsure. And I think a lot of times, very rarely do female officers say, like, they're like, woke up, it's like, I want to be a cop. You know, like some of the young men who, you know, maybe saw an uncle, a dad, or something like that as cops, and that's something that they look up to and they want to, you know, mirror that and be like them. So we want to try to be that for young ladies in our community. So a lot of times when we're out, I know there's like always a common theme when if I'm in uniform, I might be in the store and I'm like, take her to jail, she's been bad. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Matter of fact, here's the sticker. You know, because you want to, you know, present a very positive image when it comes to police, and especially as a female, and you're like a little kid, you know, in the store, you know, in line.
I would say, you know, you may not even recognize like how successful as a female you can be at this job, and even in our specialized units. So when I joined the police department, I never even thought about SWAT. And it wasn't until I was taking a class and J.D. Guard said, hey, have you ever thought about SWAT? And I'm like, no, I can't. I'm not like an expert shooter or anything. He's like, we need people that can make good decisions. We can teach you how to shoot. So, you know, like people like paving the way, kind of like you said, you know, other females in different roles. And then it allows people to say, well, if she can do it, then maybe I can too.
I just want to add to that. I think also from a historical perspective, that 15% isn't that low. When you consider that females were really just starting to enter the profession in significant numbers in the probably 70s and 80s, and then in the 90s and early 2000s starting to be valued and moved up into higher positions, really we've made tremendous strides. And it's no different than any other traditionally male-dominated profession. Like Jackie was saying, you know, young girls need to see role models in those positions to know that that's attainable for them.
Absolutely. What do you guys see as potential challenges with motherhood? I know you're all mothers. In career advancement in CMPD with a motherhood role as well?
I would say it's definitely a challenge. I was torn leaving my kid at home. My husband's a firefighter, so our schedules were, you know, we were back and forth, handing off the kid, relying on our grandparents to help us. The benefit for me was I was already promoted at that point. So, you know, I had a schedule where I had a little bit of flexibility where I could accommodate some of the scheduling conflicts. So it's a challenge, and one that we are still trying to figure out how we can better serve our females, mothers, in navigating that role. Mm-hmm. Child care is a huge issue, especially if you're working third shift.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you guys have things in place at the precincts for child care of any type, especially on third shift?
We don't. We are looking at avenues. We have somebody that's looking at options. It's something that we've had committees stand up and look at, and then it's kind of fallen to the wayside. Like we haven't found that perfect fit. We've looked at other agencies across the United States, and you know, it's one of those things. If you have a central location, is somebody going to drive 30 minutes out of the way to drop off their kid? Then you know, go another 30 minutes to the work, come back, and you know, you're talking about adding 2 hours onto your day just for childcare.
Jackie, how was that transition for you in your advancement within CMPD and motherhood?
Much like Tonya, I was already promoted, and so that flexibility in schedule, I was able to work a later shift for about 18 months to stay home with my child before my youngest, before she went to childcare. But again, if I were an officer on a dedicated second or third shift, I would not have had that flexibility. So that is something that has always been an issue. Even as a division captain years ago, anytime one of our female officers would go out on maternity, we'd always just cross our fingers and hope that she comes back. And not only does she come back, but we hope that she stays. And we would always try to do small things like, small shift adjustments, daytime adjustments, weekend adjustments, where oftentimes their spouse was off on the weekend, so they'd say, hey, can I work every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so I could be home during the week. So different division captains and majors try to, at least we hope, work with those individual schedules so we can support our women, because we don't want it to be either or, right? You should be able to do this job, be successful, and be a mother, a spouse, or whatever it is that you need, because, something that we all agree is, as women, we're so many things to so many people, and we're often putting ourselves last. And so that's one of the things is we want to try to put them first, especially our new young officers and young mothers.
And I was just going to say, I think it's important to recognize, though, that, we give all of our supervisors the autonomy to work with their entire shift, not just because they're a mother, but, I know that we had one male officer that was taking care of his mother, so we adjusted his shift so he could take care of his ailing mother. So I just want to make sure that, everybody recognizes we don't just do this for females. We really
Absolutely.
try to do it.
Tanya, I love you sharing that, because caregiving comes at all different seasons of life.
That's right.
And all different scenarios.
That's right.
So I thank you so much for sharing that. Share with us something that people would be really surprised to learn about what it takes to have the mental fortitude every day to be a sworn officer.
That's a good question.
I know, I saw that was a big sigh you took, Jackie. You're like,
Well, I guess I'll open it up right here in front of everybody. I think the first thing that jumped to mind for me in that question was my time that I spent over the Crimes Against Children unit. As you talk about fortitude, none of us are naive, I guess, to how our children are victimized. But when you are steeped in it every day, it takes a toll on you.
Jackie, thank you for being so authentic with us and sharing that, because when you put yourself out to share that with us, I think about how did you cope and how did you manage this in your psyche and your well-being 24/7 when you were at work, but then also when you were home with your family? And is there the ability to be able to turn that off when you get home with your family? Or is it always in your mind? How do you manage that?
You never turn it off. I've been out of that for probably 10 years now, and it's still, you still carry it. But when you're in it day to day, your focus is on the job. Your focus is on closure for the victims. You come in every day. I was the captain of the unit. I had some spectacular sergeants and a team of detectives working with me. And your daily focus is to drive them to do their job, complete the task, and put bad guys in jail. That's the ultimate bad guy. Anyone who would victimize a child or the elderly is just the ultimate bad guy, right? I can tell you there's nothing more rewarding in policing as well as when you do make a case and make an arrest on a child victimization case. So that's what drives you. That's how you get through your day-to-day. And I served in that unit for 3 years, a little over 3 years. And it wasn't probably until 5 or 6 months after I left that unit that I realized how it was affecting me. And that's when I was sort of starting to shake it off and recognize that it was taking a toll on me emotionally. So for that reason, I think, and for law enforcement across the country, we have made such tremendous strides in recognizing the toll vicarious trauma plays on us and the importance of wellness, of mental health wellness within our agency. And I know you're planning to get to that as we progress.
Well,
as
you know
well.
what? This is a perfect
Yeah.
segue on it, because I would love to hear from Tonya and Jackie as well on the mental health side. You know, when I look at what we as a community can do to help in law enforcement, when we had the awful mass shooting that took place last April, for Hood Harget Breakfast Club, we wanted to immediately be able to tie our funds that we were going to raise into mental health assistance. When I reached out to Chief Jennings, that was the area as well that he wanted us to be able to help with. So I know there are a lot of people in this community that daily want to find ways that they can help and relieve the tiniest bit of burden. And so I'd love to hear, you know, what do you guys see that the community can help on the mental health side, and how have you found for yourselves personally that you're able to deal with those challenges that you live and see every day?
I think you have to look at the whole package, and you look at it mental, physical, and spiritual health. So we really try to bring those components together. So we have like our peer support, police chaplains to kind of deal with that, you know, spiritual side. And then you have to look at your physical health as well. So we have gyms at all of our team offices, understanding the importance that can play in your mental health. So they all kind of tie in together. And we've tried to be really intentional of targeting those three areas. We have clinicians that are hired by CMPD. We're getting a therapy dog, understanding how popular they are and how it impacts our officers. But it's tough. It's easy to go down a rabbit hole if you're working off duty, eating fast food, getting 4 hours of sleep, not taking care of yourself because of needs of the family, needs of the job. It's a challenge. I remember finding myself, you know, when Jackie Bryley and I worked in Eastway together, you know, working off-duty jobs, getting 4 hours of sleep because I was a mom. I wanted to be the one to get my kid up at 6 in the morning, getting her ready for daycare, dropping her off. I didn't want to miss any part of that. And I had to take a pause and slowly start working on each one of those elements. So first I stopped working. I didn't do a lot of off-duty, but just 2 nights a week impacted me. And then from there I kind of really tried to focus on like my nutrition, understanding the impact of that. And by being able to do those two, focusing on those two, then I was able to kind of start on that physical journey.
I just have to ask, for those that can't see us, we all smiled when you said therapy dog. We're all dog
Yes.
people in this
Yes.
room for
Yes.
sure. They all have our heart. So when will we be seeing some therapy dogs coming around as our CMPD friends?
So they're looking at different breeders now. So we know it's going to be some type of doodle. We just don't know what type.
I'm hearing this for the first time. I love
Yes.
doodles.
I
We
know,
all
I
love
know.
doodles. Yay!
I know.
I love
Partial to the
this.
doodles.
Yeah. So hopefully within the next month or two, I would think, maybe.
Yeah.
think so.
Well, I have a special request then. When we get our first official therapy dog, we need to have them as a Breakfast Club mascot when we're honoring our police
Absolutely.
officers.
We
at
can make that happen.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Consider that done.
Love that very much. Jackie, how about you? How did you, or how do you manage?
I think that I'm actually learning from the younger generation of officers. Before I got promoted to deputy chief, I was in patrol, so I had an opportunity to spend a lot of time talking to officers. When I was an officer, you know, you didn't talk to a major or a captain. You know, you mainly dealt with your sergeant. That's who you took all your issues to, if you were even going to talk about issues. And so one of the things I learned as a patrol major was, I think we give like the younger generation of cops sometimes a bad name and a hard time just because, you know, we came up a certain way and they have it easy. But where they definitely get it right is balancing their work-life balance and demanding, you know, the wellness piece of what it takes and being able to embrace and support that. And going into a roll call and saying, hey, it's okay not to be okay. Matter of fact, I'm not okay right now. Like, and I think the first time I did that as a major in one of my division's roll call, I was like, I've had a horrible day, and I ran down like the list of everything that, was going on in my life that day. And you could just see them like, okay, she's halfway relatable. So I think that, being able to learn from the younger generation of officers and embracing the wellness piece and supporting them. And I think so those officers that are in that mid part of their career or on the tail end of their career, they could learn a little bit from those folks.
I think she brings up a great point about the younger generation. Like when we were coming up, if you talked about mental health, people would probably look at you sideways and not want you to back them up on a call for service and think that there was an issue. They would have been like, suck it up, buttercup, rub some dirt on it, and get back out there. Back in the day, if you were involved in a shooting, there was no talking to a clinician and make sure you were okay. It was, you get back on the streets and get back, get the job done.
Yeah, better not show any emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Isn't it interesting how all these years into it and you learn from the younger generation as well on a completely different approach that they have to this?
The whole shift is changed. The whole mindset has changed around mental health. You've got pro athletes coming out. It's changed.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if your mental health is at risk, every phase of your life is at risk.
That's right.
And so I'm a huge proponent of seeing what we can do in each of us to take care of that every day. Ladies, I want to ask you each a special question. You all have 26 plus years on the force. But if you think back to when you started with CMPD, has there been a story over the years that really reminded you of the why? Why did I put my life on the line? Why did I run so many risks for my family with this career move that I made? And what was it that really sticks out as this is why I became a CMPD officer? Jackie, I'm going to go with you first.
Oh, boy. So I have two, actually. One very long time ago and then one more recent. So when I was an officer, I was a SRO at a high school here in Charlotte. And the community at that school, I saw myself in some of those young students there where, their neighborhood challenges and their life challenge and their family challenges personally resonated with me. And so I was able to really connect with them and understand some of the things that they were going through. So, if they were disruptive in class, maybe it wasn't because they were a bad student. Maybe it's because they were up all night taking care of a sibling or something like that. So when I would have those one-off conversations with the principal or a guidance counselor about a particular student, I'd be able to kind of bridge that gap and that difference because I could understand where they were coming from. And so for me, that gave me purpose because I was like, this is why I should be doing this because there's nobody to speak for them. And at, in 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, they can't express, what they're going through productively. So I was often that voice and that filter. So that was part of my why. And then just sitting here thinking just now, I'm thinking back to, because we've been talking about our kids and our family, I'm thinking back to, I want to say maybe the 2016 civil unrest we had in Charlotte. And my youngest at the time, she might have been, 3 or 4 maybe. And if most people don't remember who was here working, we were 12-hour shifts. Some of us were sleeping at the office, just going home enough time to, say hey to the family, grab a quick shower, get back out there. And I remember leaving, it was a quick turnaround, and I was getting my stuff together, leaving back out. And my youngest daughter was like, she was seeing it on the TV because it was making national news. And despite my best efforts of her not seeing the TV, she was like, why are you going back out there? And I think I told somebody a story, and it absolutely broke my heart because I have this kid who's like, why are you going back out there? Stay home. And I remember sitting down with her in the doorway saying, well, I have to go. Somebody has to go. And she just gave me a hug. And then, I mean, driving to work that afternoon, like, I was in tears because I was like, I want to do this. This is why somebody has to do it. But then just being an inspiration for my youngest daughter, because she still remembers, she's 12 now, she still remembers that to this day. So that's my second why.
I'm going to keep from crying here. Yes, I love that. Jackie, we'll go to you next.
Okay. So, needless to say, I think all of us have touched many people in our careers, but there's one that really stands out to me, this particular story, I think because it also changed my perspective on people. I was midway through my career and I was working a case kind of in a detective capacity, and I was working with a woman as what we call a CRI, confidential reliable informant. That's basically someone who's being paid for information to make a case on a bad guy. And this woman was a drug-addicted prostitute working out of a motel along an interstate. And this investigation took months. And over the course of those months, she started to open up to me and tell me about herself, her past, her history. She wasn't too far off in age from me either. Turns out this woman had a 4-year college degree. She worked in the hospital industry. She was like I'm not sure her exact title, but she was high up at a hospital somewhere in Florida, in the state of Florida. And she told me how through her career, through the professional career, there was a constant barrage of conferences and parties. And at these parties, it was a lot of alcohol. And then it was someone introducing her to cocaine. And then the cocaine turned into crack. And before you know it, her entire career spiraled down to the point that she was a prostitute in West Charlotte living in a motel. So as this continued, at some point, and I guess through gaining her trust, I just asked her, do you want help? And she didn't immediately, but over the period of a few more weeks, she finally came to me and said, okay, I'm ready. I want the help. And so I actually got her into a treatment facility, an inpatient treatment facility. And about 2 months later, she called me and invited me to her house, her mom's house, where she had gone back to her mom. And they invited me to come down and visit. And I came in and I met her mom and I met her daughter, who was a young lady, maybe 18, 19 at that point. And her mother just cried and said, thank you for giving me my daughter back. And that has stuck with me my entire career. And I think more than anything, because it just tells you, you don't know people. No matter what you see on the surface, you don't know people.
So I would go back to my Eastway days, and my husband and I were trying to get pregnant. And during that time frame, you'll know who I'm talking about. I won't use any names, but there was a certain prostitute that worked 36 in the plaza that got pregnant twice while I was trying to have a kid. And I'm like, God, I might not be the best mom, but I'm thinking I could probably do a little better than this. Fast forward, after about 4.5 years, God blessed me with a beautiful little girl. And, during that time frame, you see man's inhumanity to man, day in and day out. And it's easy to get jaded, like to judge people for what they're doing. And, I was starting to get in that place. And I remember my daughter's born, she's getting a couple years of age on her. And we did a search warrant on a drug house, a doper. We go in, we hit the house, and sitting at the table was like a kindergartner and a kid maybe about second grade taking care of his little brother, sitting there eating a bowl of cereal, cockroaches running all over the place, mom shacked up in the back with our target. And I looked at that kid's eyes, and I saw my daughter's. I was like, and that softened my heart. Like God used that to soften my heart because I saw my kid. And I was like, what future or what hope did they have if we don't find a way to break that cycle, right? And so that's really stuck with me. And I love working with kids, and any opportunity that I have to potentially talk to one or be part of an organization that supports kids, I try to do that.
Well, ladies, thank you. I've had the privilege to get to call each of you friends for several years, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit down today and to, I think, to give people a little bit of a different perspective and a little bit more insight into CMPD and through the lens of 3 beautiful women. So I really appreciate your time today.
Yes.
This was great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
We're
Thank
we're
you.
grateful for the partnership.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.